Our Psalter reading today comes from Psalm 16 and can be found on pages 430 and 431 in your pew Bibles. Protect me, O God, for in you I take refuge. I say to the Lord, you are my Lord. I have no good apart from you. As for the holy ones in the land, they are the noble, in whom is all my delight. Those who choose another god multiply their sorrows. Their drink offerings of blood I will not pour out, or take the names upon my lips. The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. I have a goodly heritage. I bless the Lord who gives me counsel. In the night also my heart instructs me. I keep the Lord always before me, because he is at my right hand. I shall not be moved. Therefore my heart is glad, and my soul rejoices. My body also rests secure. For you do not give me up to Sheol, or let your faithful one see the pit. You show me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. In your right hand are pleasures forevermore. Our gospel reading today comes from the book of Luke, chapter 8. The page can be found on page 841 in your pew Bibles. Then they arrived at the country of the Gerasenes, which is opposite Galilee. As he stepped out on land, a man in the city who had demons met him. For a long time he had worn no clothes, and he did not live in a house, but in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he fell down before him and shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me." For Jesus had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For many times it had seized him. He was kept under guard and bound with chains and shackles. But he would break the bonds and be driven by the demon into the wilds. Jesus then asked him, "What is your name?" He said, "Legion," for many demons had entered him. They begged him not to order them to go back into the abyss. Now there on a hillside a large herd of swine was feeding, and the demons begged Jesus to let them enter these. So he gave them permission. Then the demons came out of the man and entered the swine, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. When the swineherds saw what had happened, they ran off and told it in the city and in the country. Then people came out to see what had happened, and when they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Those who had seen it told them how the one who had been possessed by demons had been healed. And then all the people of the surrounding country of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them, for they were seized with great fear. So he got into the boat and returned. The man from whom the demons had gone begged that he might be with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you." So he went away, proclaiming throughout the city how much Jesus had done for him.
First, let's pick up where we left off last Sunday when I didn't quite finish things. Remember Elijah, the powerful prophet, had just scored a huge victory over the king of Judah and his false prophets of power and domination. And Queen Jezebel, the power behind the throne, threatened to bring the power of the state down on Elijah. So he ran for his life from her assassin down into the desert wilderness, down to the mountain of God in Sinai, where he witnessed the awesome power of nature, but found God in the still small whisper of silence and peace and calm. And the voice not only reassured him that he's not alone in this struggle to be faithful to God, but it gives him his next assignment, to go out and lay the foundation for the defeat of defiance against God. So in spite of being overwhelmed with fear and fatigue and disappointment, he relies on God's strength and opens himself to God's possibilities as he moves forward. And that's something we can take encouragement from, relying on God to strengthen us in the same way. So, let's move on. Noel, I should have had you up here because your little sermon here was probably the best concise sermon for the day that I've heard in a long time. I'm going to try to do almost as well. So, I got to tell you, I never actually believed in demon possession until I started working in the hospital. Drugs, mindless violence, uncontrollable anger, unreasoning fear all show themselves in biblical terms and reduce human beings to much less than God made us to be. This past week, I witnessed a woman brought to the emergency department with some self-inflicted stab wounds. I watched and listened as nurses and doctors struggled to treat her as she screamed and cursed uncontrollably and thrashed and lashed out until security and police handcuffed her, finally sedated her to keep from hurting herself more. While this was going on, I witnessed doctors and nurses in the next trauma room desperately working to save another young woman, pounding on her chest and pushing blood into her that leaked out of her multiple stab wounds faster than they could put it in. And I witnessed the moment of silence that staff observed as they yielded to the obvious and acknowledged the passing of that young stabbing victim's life, whose name was known only to God at that point. A moment interrupted by the shrieking and bellowing of the woman next door, who would soon be arrested for the stabbing. And this story about this man completely out of control came crashing into my mind as one reality that stalks our society every day played itself out a few feet from me. There are many kinds of madness around us that we try very hard not to look at. The madness of violence towards others expressed in so many ways and made so deadly by having so many grievances and so many weapons and so many hands that should never have access to them. The madness of deliberate unbelief in and refusal to accept what's right before our eyes. The madness of captivity to things and chemicals and ideas. The madness of ancient evils we thought were long gone parading shamelessly before us. The madness of resistance to change, that we've always done it that way, of doing the same things over and over and expecting different results, that ends up defeating solutions to deep systemic problems. The madness of fear of the unknown, of fear of what we imagine is coming, of the paralysis that fear brings and takes us captive. The madness of always having to have our own way and of thinking that we have the answers to all problems for all people for all time. And the madness of demanding to be free to do what we feel like doing regardless of what that does to those around us. And the madness of hatred of everyone who's not like us and the holders of every idea we don't agree with. Many, many kinds of madness. Jesus and his disciples arrived by boat on the east shore of the Sea of Galilee in a place known as Gerasa, part of the Decapolis, or 10 cities, a mostly Gentile, Greek-speaking area east of the Jordan River. We know they're Gentiles because Jews didn't raise pigs. Gentiles did, and they were making money off the Roman occupation, selling pork to the Roman army. Luke doesn't tell us why Jesus went there, he just tells us this story. So as soon as they get out of the boat, a man runs up to Jesus, a man who is seriously mentally ill, naked, running wild out in the open, sleeping in the tombs he can break into, frightening the local people. He immediately recognizes Jesus and his power over demons. Facing down real evil, it feels the presence of ultimate good in Jesus as torment. Jesus orders the unclean spirit, the demon, to come out of the man, and he or they screams, "I beg you, do not torment me." Jesus asks him his name, and the man shouts, "Legion." If he's referring to a Roman legion, he's talking about 5,000 to 6,000 demons, a lot for anyone to deal with. And the demons that inhabited this man begged Jesus not to send them back to hell, but to let them infest a nearby herd of hogs, which they do and drive the hogs down the hillside into the lake to their deaths, which terrifies the swineherds who run back to tell the town what happened. The three synoptic Gospels tell this story, and both Mark and Luke include an interesting political detail. The Roman legion that occupied Judea, the 10 Fretensis legion, was nicknamed the Wild Boars. In the Genesis Rabbah, a major Jewish midrash, Jews had long imagined the pagan, unclean Romans as destructive wild boars who pretended to be law-abiding but destroyed everything in their path. And calling them demons and wishing them drowned dead in the sea was a subtle jab at the enemy in a gospel written just after Rome's violent destruction of Jerusalem. But Jesus meets this tormented man's mad violence with calm acceptance. When they arrive all out of breath, the townspeople find him sitting with Jesus, quiet, clothed, and calm. When Jesus gave the demons permission to inhabit the swine and they left him, that crazy man pushed himself up to his knees, shook his head as he stood up, and began to remember who he really was. And Jesus said, "You'll feel better with some clothes on. Here, put this on." And he said, "Sit down here beside me where it's safe and quiet, where your restless mind can quiet down and focus. Your suffering is over. Now let's talk about who you are and what you can be, about what God is ready to help you do in your life." And after suffering evil and fear and loneliness for so long, all the man wanted to do was to be near Jesus, the ultimate good, who wanted nothing for him but to be free and whole and healed and loved. When the people of the town understood what had happened to their lucrative pork trade, they were terrified and pressured Jesus to leave the area. The man begged Jesus to go with him, but Jesus knew that he needed to be restored to his own community, and he knew what the man could do for his community, so he told him, "Go home. Tell everyone how much God has done for you." And he sent him there as the first missionary to the Gentiles. Jesus used God's love to turn madness into good. Elijah was faced with that unrelenting, murderous madness that chased him down into the most remote part of the wilderness, down to a place of death if God hadn't intervened. Coaxed him up the sacred mountain and met him face to face, not in chaos and destruction, but in sheer silence, calmness, and attention to the one who brings meaning and peace. And he yielded to God's invitation to put fear aside and see beyond the obvious, to the place where God is at work in silent, fear-dispersing restoration and empowerment. And Elijah went on to become an agent to defeat evil in his time. God told Elijah, "Get back to work. Head up to Damascus and give power to the one who will ultimately end this defiance of me." Jesus told the man in the Gerasene cemetery, "Go back home and tell everyone what God has done for you." Madness can be overcome if we have the courage to love unconditionally, fearlessly, and extravagantly, and to trust God to help us do that. While the world offers different scripts, Christians remember that where suffering exists, and especially where suffering exists, Christ remains in relationship with us. When the world sees those with mental illness as frightening, unproductive, unwelcome, and other, Christians are called to embrace them as suffering, frustrated, and welcome, just like us. We may not have Jesus' power over demons, but we do have the ability to love without judgment, to love in tangible ways, to do real things for real people in real trouble. Our UCC conference is the third WISE conference in the UCC. That stands for Welcoming, Inclusive, Supportive, and Engaged for Mental Health. A team of ministers and mental health professionals in this conference work to offer mental health support and educational resources to our conference. They support congregations who are working to become WISE for mental health congregations that are welcoming to individuals and families living with mental health challenges, brain disorders, and substance abuse disorders. The National UCC, through the UCC Mental Health Network, supports this program with educational materials, conferences, and consultations. And UCC conferences and congregations do the work. Fatigue, fear, and discouragement hit all of us eventually. Madness is always around us in many forms, and it often touches us. And if nothing else, it just grinds us down. But the love of God also surrounds us. And Jesus channels that love to calm us, call us to rise above our fear and accept his peace and hope. Jesus says, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not let them be afraid." Like Elijah, let's let God awe us, calm us, and leave us confident of our way forward. And like the man of Jericho, let's take Jesus' words at face value and face this mad, frightening, exhausting world with him at our side, giving thanks for what he's already done for us. And as we believers are called to be Christ's hands and feet to the world, to show Christ's love in the world and to each other, we can be that calming, supporting, encouraging influence to each other and to everyone we meet, everyone who's ground down by fear, fatigue, and madness, to be the love of Christ that gets all of us through the day, through these difficult days. Amen.